Welcome everyone to this new episode of the Privacy Rules PrivacyEspresso series. This is the second episode of 2025, so I renew my Happy New Year also in this occasion for the ones that have lost our session of last week. In the episode of today, we are joined by Endre Varady from the law firm VJT Partners. Endre is a partner of the firm and the head of their data protection practice. And we are with him today to discuss about something that was already discussed last year in the late fall of last year, which is NIS2 or NIS2, but on which we have some relevant news from Hungary. We already had indeed a session with Endre on this topic exactly for Hungary, but the news is that there have been some updates that Endre will share with us today, which are pretty relevant. So he will share his invaluable insights together with us, trying to keep a pretty practical approach. We also know that NIS2 implementation is taking time in several countries all over Europe. Many are not yet in an advanced stage with it, but it is coming, and the experience of the countries like Hungary that have already implemented it can be really useful to everyone that will have to face or is currently facing implementation of NIS2. So, Endre, first of all, thanks a lot for being with us today. I think a good start might be to have a little recap of what we have been discussing in the last session together. We will, of course, link it, but it might be good to unpack again the Hungarian NIS2 legal framework very quickly.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Very nice to see you, Alessandro, and Happy New Year. I think that we should revise a bit the previous episode. As in the previous episode, I introduced the Hungarian NIS2 framework is pretty complex. We can talk about hours, but for the purpose of our audience, I would just highlight some very important aspects. First of all, as I said previous time, the Hungarian cybersecurity legislation has a very detailed rules on control mechanism. The Hungarian legislation specifies in more than 100 pages the technical and organizational measures, and depending on the security risk assessment, businesses may need up to implement hundreds of controls. So there will be definitely a considerable work to be done. But at the same time, as we said, we must see that this is not just a ticking type of exercise, a long to-do list, but much more than that. Why? Because it is not enough to have the right security controls, but businesses must be able to prove that their processes are NIS2 compliant. This is why they will be audited, and they must be prepared for these audits. And these audits include testing, for example, penetration testing or source code testing. And last but not least, these audits also include review of documentation where lawyers could come into play. And finally, I think it is also very important to understand that that this will be not a one-time work, but a continuous compliance work. And this is why businesses will have to build up cybersecurity governance framework, as we are talking about AI companies who are building up AI governance framework. Here we are talking about cybersecurity governance framework with proper organizational structure, roles and responsibilities to ensure NIS2 compliance on a continuous basis. So that would be my big picture.
Okay, which is already pretty complex, and there is a lot to work on, and it's better to stay up to date because, as I say, there are relevant updates already in Hungary. In the meantime, going a bit on the practical side, as an expert working in the field and on this framework in the last weeks, let's say, since implementation of it in Hungary, what's your perception on the stage in Hungary, at least? So what happened, for example, with the affected businesses? Where are they heading, and which are the key challenges that they are facing?
Since our last episode, we have had a very intensive period, and in terms of businesses, more than 3,000 entities have been registered with the cybersecurity regulator, which overperformed previous expectations. And businesses also had to keep pace with the new regulatory guidelines and new cybersecurity law. And now, as the registration process has been completed, businesses should focus on concluding a contract with auditor. This will be a very important milestone as it could influence the final date of audit. So that is why recommended to be careful about this milestone. And if I look ahead, I think in 2025, the biggest challenge will be how businesses will implement hundreds of controls by the end of 2025, which is the day for a final audit. Also, in the light of the circumstances that there are very few cybersecurity experts for thousands of businesses. And I see also as a challenge that businesses many times focus more on the technical, on the cybersecurity side of this project and overlook the legal side, which could result in wrong legal interpretation of the security risk assessment, for example, and the wrong classification of the security risk level of information systems. And this could, in the end, result either in poor security controls, which could result in fine, or excessive controls, which could result in administrative burden. So this is why I would stress again that it is very important to rely both on cybersecurity and legal experts.
Thanks, Endre. All very good insights, and from the privacy rules side, as an alliance that works with legal and cybersecurity experts, we saw how much this is a path that goes in parallel between the legal and cybersecurity, and there is a need of communication between the two type of expertise in order to work in the best direction, which is what we are trying to do. How we are trying to support the companies by having those different type of experts together supporting the companies, thanks to experts like you, of course. In this regard, my next question, we move to the business side. On the regulatory side, what is happening? Which are the updates? So how is it the regulator in Hungary moving? And is it giving, for example, any guidance? Because this is one of the topic related to the legal and cybersecurity part. If you have more guidance by the regulator, you may probably understand what you have to do on the legal side. So what's the situation there?
Yeah, it is very interesting situation on the regulator side as well. First of all, it may be interesting that the supervisory function of the regulator to some extent has been delegated to auditors, but this does not mean that the regulator is not active. In the contrary, it is very, very active. Especially on promoting cyber security awareness through roadshows. And it is a very positive development as well that recently the cybersecurity regulator issued a guideline on NIS2 compliance. And this includes explanations how to build up a security governance framework, how to complete the security risk assessment and the security risk classification. And on the top of all, the regulator also prepared comparison table in which the regulator shows how the Hungarian controls could be aligned with the international cybersecurity standards like the ISO 27001. And this could be a big help for businesses who already use these international cybersecurity standards, as they can focus only on the gaps between the Hungarian and the international standards. And now we are waiting for the regulator to issue decree on the official audit methodology, which will become a uniform law for all auditors. This will be a very important law, as businesses will be able to prepare then for the final audit.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for this update on the regulatory side, Endre. And there is one more, which is the update of the day, actually, meaning that even if NIS2 was implemented, long time ago, we can say now, on the 1st of January, we know that there was a completely new cybersecurity law in Hungary entering into force. So, we had many changes on the business side, on the regulatory side, on the legal side related to cybersecurity new laws. Is this new framework changing anything, and which are those key changes if there are present?
Yes, it looks very interesting that Hungary is one of the few countries who implemented NIS2 as one of the first countries, and then it brought a completely new law. The reason why the lawmaker did this is that it want to make a uniform cybersecurity code, which could be a unified cybersecurity framework for all entities, including NIS2 entities and entities under the Critical Resilience Directive. But the good news is that this new law does not change the framework. The framework remains the same. We have just some minor amendments, like new roles on information security officers, which are very similar to GDPR rules on data protection officer, or we have a better distinction between critical and important entities. But what is a very interesting and important change for my perspective, that the new law finally introduced the corporate management responsibility, based on which management will have important tasks in NIS2 compliance to oversee the cybersecurity processes and manage them, approve them, and there will be also a direct liability for managers and even ban from management activity. So it will be very important in the future to properly involve the management in the compliance project.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for this update, which is fine, meaning that we were expecting the worst, but at the very end, it's more a clarificatory type of documentation that can help businesses in better understanding how to apply all those requirements. Let's go, as always, at the end on the practical side, just in 1 minute, because it's what we have left. Which are the key takeaways that we can have, and which should be the approach of Hungarian and also companies having been business in Hungary to these NIS2 new requirements and developments?
Yeah, there are a lot of tasks about which businesses have to be careful, but I will try to be brief. So my first general recommendation would be to prepare a very good action plan, because it is important to remain focused and see all the important tasks in an action plan tracker, which contains the deadlines and the next steps. So it is very important not to overlook some important issues in the rush. But if I would give some practical further takeaways, I would just be very brief. So first of all, be careful about selecting the right auditor with the appropriate license, and try to get a preferential date for audit. As the later you will get the date for audit, the more time you will have for the preparation. Pay attention to legal regulation, as the wrong classification of information systems could result in poor or excessive controls. Leverage your existing framework. If you use already ISO 27001, this could significantly help your compliance process. Do not forget during the entire process to involve corporate management and document their involvement. And last but not least, which I didn't mention in this episode, but it is really, really important, do not forget about cyber security trainings, as the lack of cybersecurity awareness could completely render the compliance efforts.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for those key quick takeaways, Endre. I would like to thank you very much for being with us today. And I would also like to thank, of course, all our listeners for following us in this episode and all the episodes of the past and in the future. So looking forward to meet you and all our listeners together very, very soon again. And see you to the next Privacy Espresso episode. Bye, everyone, and bye, Endre.
Thank you. See you.